We are going live on YouTube.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Creating the Future, our November board meeting. And welcome to those of you who are here joining us. We see Eli is making himself connection. Creating the Future, our November. And for those of you who are able to watch us live through our streaming, we do encourage you to follow the Twitter hashtag so that we can get capture your thoughts and hear your voice as we have our conversation here. So welcome everybody. So just quickly, one of the things that we always do with Creating the Future is holding our human space, connecting with each other. And so I would like to ask those of you here who are visually present in our Zoom room to introduce yourselves just quickly, where you are, some fact about the location that you're in, and something that is potentially exciting you or inspiring you on this day of Monday, November 9th.
Can I just collectively say, yay, yay. I'm done. I have nothing else. I'm glad you're here, Eli. Hello.
Thank you so much, Hildy. I'm here in Alameda, California. Glad to be here. Thanks, Hildy, for inviting me. I'm excited at the new president-elect, and we have a new kind of set of 4 years to look forward to.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to introduce Eli, who I met about a year ago, right this time. I was keynoting the Hank Rosso Forum in San Francisco, and before I had just about left the stage, Eli had connected on LinkedIn. So it has been a delightful conversation in the intervening months, and I'm just really glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Hildy.
Welcome, Eli. So I am I'm in Washington, D.C. now, but I am a native Oakland-born
Nice
person. So I'm a
Go Raiders.
Go Raiders. Raiders, A's, Warriors, you know, you name them all. So I'll just go since I was already talking. So Justin Pollock here in Washington, D.C. Exciting, but not quite as terrifying as there were moments that we thought it could be. So that's really nice, and glorious spring weather. I think obviously I am excited by the change that is ahead of us, and anxious. I will be honest, there's a part of me that sort of feels like, you know, as excited as I am, I kind of feel like this is kind of like disease treatment, like it's been treated, but I'm not healthy yet. So that's sort of where I am in this space.
I'll go next since nobody else said anything. Hi everyone, I'm Angie Eikenberry. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, where it is cloudy and rainy today, but it's been amazing, like the last 2 weeks of perfect weather, including on election day. You couldn't ask for better weather. And I was a poll worker that day, and it was just like the most amazing experience, the first time I've done that, and so exciting to see people come in and vote, and many people voting for the first time, and you know, being able to help facilitate that was the perfect way to spend election day, because otherwise it would have been just a lot of anxiety. And of course there was a lot of anxiety waiting for the results, but just so awesome to see so many people getting out and voting. And in particular, my awesome, I think, is my daughter, who was very active and engaged in helping campaign for different candidates. And so like she got, you know, she won some, she lost some, but you know, it's just like she's very engaged in the process. And I think I'm very hopeful for going forward to see that engagement continue, and all the other younger people who come out to vote. I hope that continues.
I'll go next. It's kind of a treat today because I don't have to mute my mic every time or unmute or mute my mic because Hildy's in another room, so we can do this both at the same time. I'm in almost sunny Tucson, Arizona right now. We had rain last night, which was just wonderful because we were in the midst of a huge drought. It is very nippy for us. It's in the high 40s. I don't think it's gone into the 50s much at all. So that's really amazing. And my awesome today is the fact that it appears that Pfizer may have a vaccine in the works. I did note that the head of Pfizer vaccine development said that they weren't part of the warp speed of getting it done, and they've accepted no money from anybody. They're working on it because they're working on it. So I think it's pretty awesome to have some positive news in that front, because I'm afraid there's going to be less than positive news for a while here until this gets under control. Wonderful to see everyone, and hi, Eli. Nice to see you too.
Morning, everyone. This is Vu. Hey, Eli, it's nice to meet you. I am in Seattle right now. I don't know why my room is always cold. The heat does not reach up here on the second floor. So, but now I'm feeling okay. Things are good. It's, I'm just trying to figure out what this means for nonprofit and philanthropy. And I just don't want us to get into this white moderation that we've just been known for. You know, there's still a lot of calls in our sector to be like, yeah, we need to like forgive and forget and learn to get along and have empathy with Trump supporters. I'm like, no, we need justice here. We need to push for justice. We need all those folks to be in jail who cage kids and stuff. So I think that's kind of what we need to do as a sector. And I'm really eager to push that narrative forward.
Right behind you.
Yeah. Wait, was that an awesome? I don't know. I got a blanket. I think that's pretty awesome.
That's pretty awesome.
Your blanket does look very awesome, Vu. I just have to say, I'm jealous.
I'll go next, if that's okay. So I'm Carl. I'm based out here at a place called St Albans, just north of London, in England, in the UK. Our awesome next week is that Vu is joining us in the UK next week, I do believe.
Wow.
Speaking at the conference for chief execs, Vu, the Aquila conference, I believe. I hope that's right. I hope I've got that right. And I think I'll be listening to you, Vu. Not that I'm not listening to you always on these meetings. I don't know if you can quite hear the pitter-patter of raindrops on my window, sort of just next to me. So it's very dark and cold, 6 o'clock in the evening here in the UK. So I'm feeling quite tired at the moment after a long day. And we are in the, it must be the fourth day of a national lockdown because COVID is getting pretty bad again here in the UK. So if I was going to give an awesome, it would be that, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff still happening, even though there's lots of good things sort of happening, but there's lots of bad stuff, lots of sad stuff as well. The former chief rabbi here in the UK, a guy called Jonathan Sachs, who just was absolutely brilliant, passed away a couple of days ago. So there's lots of things to be sad about. But, you know, with all the sort of lockdown and stuff going on, you know, I mean, I just want to be positive and sort of say, hey, you know, we're alive. Spring always follows winter.
Great. Thank you, Carl. And thank you, everyone, for sharing and connecting. And certainly if anyone's following us or watching this and wants to put some highlights of their life in Twitter for others to see, we would certainly appreciate that. So it is very nice to see everybody. And this is my first actually Zoom call since anything was announced this weekend. So it's, you know, besides the echo chamber of my own household, it is nice to see some other voices or hear some other voices and see some other faces there. So, today, as we were talking from our last board meeting and into this meeting, just two sort of key things that I know we wanted to explore. One was that our last board meeting really looked at revisiting our values. For those who may not be fully immersed in what's going on with creating the future, we are landing on a concept of thinking about ourselves as an integrity board. And part of that has to do with, when we say integrity, is making sure that the things that we do are in alignment with our values first and foremost, and that they then follow in our decision-making process of utilizing and applying catalytic thinking to the work that we do for ourselves. And obviously, revisiting those values was important to that once we established that integrity notion. And 2 meetings ago, we raised some concerns around how our values, particularly around, as Vu was saying, justice and equity, were we being as loud and proud and strong as we need to be in that space, as opposed to dancing around it. And so last board meeting, we discussed some of those, and we had a small working group that looked at the values that were currently in place for creating the future. And that's sort of the first piece that we want to touch base on. And then the second piece was, now we're in the process of wanting to invite more people into this space of this integrity board, what we euphemistically call recruitment. But getting some more clarity around what that is that we want to invite people in, and how we would then do that with the commitments that we have. So I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that, if I missed anything. So, okay, great. So I think we all know that, so I want to say this with a sense of sincerity so that it's not seen as sort of putting aside, but we know that the working with values can be a time-consuming, wordsmithing component. So what I really wanted to do was just take a moment, and Carl, you had sent out an email of acknowledging the work that has initially started with the values, sort of get just a general sort of temperature read, how people are feeling about some of what's being put in there and sort of rejiggered and recrafted, to really make sure are we on the right track of this, in terms of, is it representative of what we are collectively feeling like we want to see the values evolve to. Again, trying to skirt around really getting into wordsmithing, but making sure that we acknowledge the direction and acknowledge any particular language that does raise eyebrows or we want to be careful with. So I guess that's sort of my question is, how are people feeling or reacting or responding to the initial direction that some of the values work is going in, with just one clarification that as Carl, Angie, and I were working on it, one of the things that sort of developed was this notion of almost like a preamble statement before we jumped in, which was just something that was sort of declarative of, we the people have sort of believe these core things, they guide us. We have to say them, and we wanted that up front. So that's part of what you see at the very, very top. And Eli, I don't know, do you have access to this document?
I do not, but I'm happy to take a look at it. I'm gonna.
Angie just put a link in the chat.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that, Angie, because I didn't immediately have it either.
Thank you. Okay, so everybody muted now. What am I supposed to do?
What would you like us to do, Justin?
I think we had some, maybe Carl can talk about this better than I can, but I think when we were working on this, we were thinking about, how do people feel about this kind of preamble idea, and then also having these kind of, really highlight key things, and then there's all the other, kind of stuff and fleshing it out below. But we wanted to make sure we made a statement, I think, you know, upfront and centering the values that we had been talking about. And if anybody wants me to, I have a copy of the sort of notes from the values from 2 meetings ago. I could share too if anybody wants those.
I love having preambles to just about everything. The why of, you know, the aha moment when I looked at bylaws 10 years ago when we first started to look at bylaws, and the realization that no bylaws you ever see say, what is this document for? You know, why are we here? What are we looking at? And so just the fact that we're saying up front, this is what we're about, and here's the details. And I just wanted, in case anybody had not seen, Eli had to jump, had another call come up, but hopefully he will be back next month. Oh,
I'm actually still here, and I looked at it, and I'm really touched by it. That's what a beautiful document. Kind of breaking down everything in one place. You guys, I felt welcomed and included just now, so that's already a check on that. So thank you for all the greetings and welcomes. But yeah, it's phenomenal. I love it.
Thank you, Eli.
Wonderful. And I had my video settings set for if somebody was off video, then they were off me. So I had thought you had left. I'm glad you're still here.
I'm on my iPad, so I was actually looking at the document.
Of course. Of course, go. I also love what y'all added. I mean, you know, just scrolling down, we had talked about, and it felt so right, talking about stepping boldly into what we're for and what we're against. And I really like seeing that in there.
Yeah, Carl.
So I think the first thing I would say about the values document from my perspective is that it felt very strange editing it because we didn't write it, and it was almost like we'd been given the keys to the sweet shop, and that we were sort of it was almost like I felt a bit naughty editing it, I think is what I'm sort of trying to sort of say, and quite honestly, I mean, quite fearful actually about editing it because well, I used to work for a chair who was a journalist, and he said, hell hath no fury like someone whose copy has been edited. And I mean, it feels quite scary taking the document that is the living embodiment of someone's values and how they feel, because once you start to change those values or even change how they're written, it's almost like you are editing someone else's view of the world. And I'm saying that not because I think we've necessarily done anything wrong or anything like that, but I guess just, I mean, it's sort of worth pointing out that, you mean, for these things, for if we're modeling what this looks like for other people, if these are living documents, and there's almost got to be maybe something somewhere that sort of says, actually, it's okay. I mean, these things shouldn't stay the same forever. And if you're so precious about them that they stay the same forever, you're doing it wrong. So I think that would be my first observation. My second observation on it, based on my recollection of the sort of the conversation and sort of maybe just repeating what Justin and Angie said, but mine might be a little bit more direct. It wasn't just that there should be a preamble as much as anything, it's the fact that as a document, it's long. And I guess there's a question for the future about, is the balance right between something that is sort of trying to set out our how we feel about the world and how it should be run, and then whether or not people are going to read something that long, and have we sort of got that right? And then we asked a sort of a question of ourselves about the structure of the document and how it sort of works. And this is where, Dimitri and Hildy, we might need you to talk us through about what your thinking was in terms of why the structure it is. But it's not structured according to different values. It's almost taking you through the process of sort of my recollection is that how you think about change and then how do you deliver change, and we can see that structure, but we almost sort of wondered if a better way to do it would be to think about starting from a structure of individual values and then sort of thinking about how those values, how you live those values every day when you're sort of doing things. Because I guess it's hard to say this without it coming across as harsh, but we almost wondered if the structure necessitated repetition, and that's what made the thing longer as a whole. The final thing, if you'll sort of just bear with me one more, it was actually a really good discussion going through it and challenging ourselves and editing and again, if there's something for others to learn from it, that the process of writing the values almost or trying to edit the values is almost as important as the values themselves, because it's the process of writing and editing and arguing over them that is what is valuable. It struck me.
And I'll chime in because I think I was on the other side of the spectrum of Carl, having no qualms whatsoever making edits to anything. But I think to what Carl's point, the point he's making that I think is really important is, making sure that we create space of awareness where, we forgive ourselves for what may not be working and give ourselves permission to make it something different, and sort of that recognition that these are imperfect and always in process. But at the same time, we need to make sure that, I think to Carl, some of your point around being concise is we are concise and clear about the core pieces, like how we explain out what it looks like in practice and things like that. I think there's a lot of latitude, but to Carl's point, we want to make sure, and I think this is part of what the preamble serves as, we want to make sure that it's really clear what we stand for, so you can't miss it. The explication can augment it, but we want to make sure that we're not dancing around. And I think that was to Carl's point around, Angie, Carl, and I taking what was not nearly enough time. I mean, we worked for an hour collectively, and I know Angie and Carl worked a little bit more, and I think it clearly needs more work, but being in that space, really trying to figure out, like, what does this language really mean to us? What does it evoke to us? What are we missing? What are we not being honest about for ourselves? I know I had some of those moments, like, what word am I afraid to say because I'm afraid to say it? And is there something going on there? Is there a word that I'm using that feels more comfortable? And is that that's part of what this process was like for me too, was to say, okay, if I the white person in here, I feel like I want to carry the space to say, if it feels comfortable for me at first, that's a question I want to challenge, to just make sure that it's more than just my comfort that's making it work.
So Carl, it reminds me of your comments. It reminds me of renewing your vows in terms of a relationship and saying, well, those are my vows, but I think I'm going to change this one just a little bit because this is now working better. And in some ways that makes sense. You have the experience and you have the time to reflect and to think of it from that perspective. So in having gone over it myself, I'm impressed with the changes or the clarifications, I guess is a better way of saying it, because to your point, Justin, I don't think anything was changed from the intent in any of it. I think the intent is still clear in the document, but I was thinking about it in terms of vows, and it is good to renew your vows periodically. And I think that there is both a cathartic and a growth moment that happens, a growth opportunity, I should say, that happens by going back and looking over those, because there's been so much that has happened since we started talking about this, not only to us and our circumstance and relationships and whatnot, but the world at large, and what does that mean in that context?
Everyone, this is Vu. Sorry, I want to start by saying I really appreciate everyone who's worked on revising the values. And, you know, I wasn't involved. I wanted to be involved more, but it's been a little challenging. So, you know, I appreciate you all with that. I don't think the values are going far enough. I scanned through them. They don't mention race or white supremacy once. And I still feel like there's sort of an us versus them sort of thing, like the one place that mentions BIPOC folks. It says, you know, we will invite BIPOC folks and ask them to engage with us. It's still this sort of us and them sort of mentality, which I don't think that we are intentionally trying to do, of course. But I would imagine that a lot of folks, especially after this election, and just from what I've been gathering on Twitter and others, is like, this is very conciliatory. We don't mention the effects of capitalism that we're fighting, because so much of the stuff we're dealing with is because of racism, white supremacy, and capitalism and patriarchy. And we don't really mention those explicitly here in our values. And I think that's something we might want to consider, because it is very nice sounding language about us all sort of getting along and so on. But to what end, I feel like we kind of need to be clear about.
Yeah, I think that that's important to be in the preamble. And I think being declarative around which ones, you know, those call outs that we want to make. I think you're right on, Vu, that, and I think upfront, you know, when we talk about what those systems of inequity are, naming them, and that, you know.
I think there's a need to, and I will confess, I've been socked in, and this is the first I'm looking at these. So I'm that board member that we all complain about on other boards. I'm that board member.
Well, I am too now. So
okay, you and me together. I think there is a need to acknowledge explicitly, often, the past that we want to move beyond. I think that there is a need to explicitly acknowledge that in the preamble and in each section, whatever the sections wind up becoming. That we acknowledge that a large part of the reason creating the future has to exist is because we live in a world that is the result of white supremacy and patriarchy and colonialism and capitalism. And I think that we need to repeat that to say, why do we need these values to be stated? Why are these not the way everybody acts with each other? Oh, because these are the systems we live in. I think that because this is the water we swim in, I don't think we can acknowledge often enough that there's water there. And so I think that you know, riffing off of what you're saying, Vu, I think that it needs to be said not once, but throughout, as almost a preamble to each section, acknowledging that the systems that we currently
I think we lost both Dimitri and Hildy
Okay.
on that.
Oh, I'm back.
Are we back?
Okay. You're back. Yes.
Are we back? Okay. Did I finish before we?
No.
No, where did I leave off?
Preamble to each section, though. I get, yeah. The preamble to each
What I
section.
was sort of thinking is that there needs to be a preamble almost to each section that is the why there. Just like I said, you know, I'm tired of bylaws that never tell you what this thing is about and why. I think that it's really important for us to enumerate, not just at the beginning, not just as a preamble, but as a preamble to each section, that these are the systems we currently encounter in the world. And that's why, so we currently encounter X, Y, and Z, and therefore that's why we are stating A, B, and C. But I think there's, you know, and I don't know if this came through before when I said it or not, but that this is really the reason Creating the Future exists. It exists because all of this crap came before us, and we don't currently live in a world that looks like what we value. And I think that it's not just saying it once. I think that it's saying it throughout as a big part of why we feel that it's important to say it.
Yeah, and I like, in addition to that, because I think it's important to acknowledge those systems and the dominance that they have in creating the inequities. But I also want to make sure that we're identifying the existence of systems that are good. I mean, they have been overwhelmed by white supremacy and racism, but I think I want to make sure we don't fall into the trap of saying, because we are part of the broken system, that means there aren't good systems that we can bring forward. You know, I kind of think about, you know, I don't know if I said this in this meeting last time, the book Bowling Alone. And I was like, well, but white people are bowling alone. They're feeling disconnected. There are lots of people who feel strong senses of community, but it's not, you know, it's being overpowered. So I want to make sure that we do the call out of those things that are certainly detrimental and dominant and power driven, but also making the effort to, I think this is part of the making it not us, them, but saying there are systems, there are people, we know how to do this. It's not that we don't know how to do this, and we want to make sure we honor that too, that there's a history of how this does work that has been washed. There's not even a history, there's a present of this. So I think, you know, making sure that it's a both and for me in that space.
Well, and in part, I think I know that as a sidebar someplace in the document or on the page is the Pollyanna principles, which is the strengths to build on. Which could be. I'm not suggesting it has to be. The pride of authorship in this whole document is non-existent. I will share with you, Carl. The thought that came to my mind is the Constitution of the United States, which specifically says, change this thing, because in 200 years, things are going to look different, and we may have forgotten something. Change this thing because we acknowledge, even though we own slaves, that it's probably not a great idea. You know, they built that in. They built that in. And I think that this document, just in terms of your asking where it came from the desire to state what our values would look like in action. So you're right in your observation that it was naming the kinds of actions. We have relationships that we're in. We have, you know, whatevers. But it was naming the actions and noting what the values would look like inside those actions. And in part inspired by some of what we saw at RVC booth, from the very explicit, here's how you'll be treated at the reception desk. And so just finding the balance of that. But yes, it has to be changeable. It has to be changeable. And you know, part of me is thinking, okay, well, yeah, that needs to be in the preamble, that just like it is in the Constitution, that says this document is a living, breathing document, which means change it.
So coming back to Vu, the clear message is that we've not changed it enough. So we've got more work to do, is what I think I take from the conversation.
Yeah.
And Vu, you know, let's be clear about this. Like, because you weren't there with us, we didn't change it enough because I mean it's an it's a living, breathing example for me of why you need an approach when you're doing any sort of work like this, is that it's why you need different people around the table who bring different perspectives. We clearly were a little bit similar in terms of our perspective, and we didn't have you there to challenge us.
I think the other part of it too is back to like being worried about changing it too much because we were worried about changing it at all, right? So I think maybe starting over, but I like the idea of letting it be values driven too, like how we clarify those values, make them bolder, and then in our explanation of each value, we connect it to the action. So it's values driven as opposed to action driven, if that makes sense.
Well, I think I've always sort of understood this, that we want to, I mean, this is my own perception, we want to be very clear on the values so that there's no lack of clarity. And then we have, just as you were saying, Angie, a real strong bridge that says from values to behaviors, so that we know what to expect, what people can experience, and how we apply them. I think that's a modeling that's important. Well, so let me just ask this: does it make sense then? I mean, sort of that acknowledgement that these still need work, and we should definitely sort of go back to the crafting table. Again, try and create another opportunity for people to come together around the document and continue to push it and think about it in terms of what needs to be pushed farther, what needs to potentially be restructured. Again, thinking about a working group to do that. Does that seem like how are people with that as sort of the next step, so that we, yeah.
You know what, I'm almost wondering, Justin, if and I'm trying to be articulate here. My brain is completely fried. I'm wondering if instead of our thinking of this as we need to address this document, get that done so that it's done, if maybe we meet for an hour or two a month until it's done, rather than our, I mean, we could meet every week, but that would, I don't have the time for that. But if we can meet for an hour or two every month until we feel we've got something that actually does what we need it to do, rather than our feeling like we got to jam it into, oh, it's got to get done.
It also gives the
I like
opportunity
that.
for other folks to participate.
Yeah.
If it's over a period of time, other voices that can, raise issues that we're not seeing.
And that allow us to play with the language. So, for instance, one of my hot buttons that I just found in the preamble is the word evidence-based, which just makes me want to hurt people. If we are an experiment and we are stepping in to create a future that is different than our past, there is no evidence for some of that. I have been asked for now going on 20 years, is this research-based? And my answer is, if you have research on how to change the world, how come you haven't shared that with anybody? We'd all like to see it. And so I think it's really important that we give ourselves the space to experiment and that we be really clear about that. So that's just one example, but I think having the ability to have those kinds of discussions on a document that is going to guide everything we do, I think is hugely important, and that we give ourselves the space and the time to do so. And as you said, Dimitri, I think that also allows us the opportunity to invite people in, invite our community in to help play with it.
Okay. So I think what I'd like to propose is that we find that next meeting time and tackle two things. The first of which is what structure is best conducive to us completing this? And two, what are the key issues, and initiating again, what are the key things that we need to address and sort of tackle?
It seems to me that we've probably done enough work and had this. I mean, I was already making some changes on that while we were talking, and when each person was mentioning things. Is there an opportunity to update this, clean it? Maybe we just focus just on the values and not all the actions for now, and get it cleaned up and have a way for people to just look at the document and make further additions, and then we maybe discuss it again. I mean, I think I don't know. I don't want to wait I don't know if we need to, wait to figure that out. We've already figured out some things that we can build on, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Are you
my sense is that there are still probably some triggers as people go through this. I mean, that was sort of what I'm framing for Hildy, is that there are things where we might not be quite as clear about what the intent of some of the language is, like why that language versus another. And I do think, to Carl's point, that there's some importance to that conversation, because that's some of the sense making and negotiating that needs to happen around it. So
so should we just use our board meeting to do that? I mean, where do we need to set up a separate meeting, I guess is what I'm asking, if this is the role of the board to do this?
I guess what is the feeling of folks about how we want to use this time or other time?
Clarify, Angie, what you're thinking. What you think?
Well, I think we just said that working through these values together is important, and we have regular board meetings scheduled, so we use that board meeting time to get to a point where we do all have a set of values that we all think are appropriate. And until we do that, I'm not sure what other work the board's actually going to be able to do. So like, for example, if we segue right now into recruitment, if we don't really have a clarification on but I also feel like we're pretty close to a clarification. Like, none of us are arguing with Vu about not having that kind of language. I think in the document, it's just adding it, clarifying. I think, evidence-based, I don't know, maybe Carl, you want to duke it out with me about that, but I mean, I just don't think that we're that far away from having an agreement. So can maybe we spend time, like even the rest of this time today, doing that, and then maybe the next meeting, but we don't have to. I'll stop talking.
I have no objection to when we have the conversation, whether we have it in the interim or we have it during the board meetings. So long as we have it, and so long as, especially at this top level of what needs to be included and what is important in structuring it, I think that needs to be public and inviting. So if we do that now, great. And also having whatever conversation simultaneously about recruitment that we want to have.
Well, so let me ask this question, which is, do people feel prepared right now to continue that conversation and really look at the document a little bit more critically for the remainder of today's meeting?
Well, I think I'm looking at the questions that you said, that you noted, Justin, in terms of the structure of the document and the key values that we want to address. And those are really top level. I don't think we would even would need to look at the document and wordsmith it to be addressing. And especially, when I saw what structure of the document, I thought, okay, well, catalytic thinking can help us figure out what the structure of the document needs to be and what key values we want to address. Those are the kinds of things I don't think we need. Yeah, I think, that feels the kind of thing that we should be discussing.
I would just add, it was an enjoyable session when we went through it last time. When you come together and you're clearly focused on a task like that and you know what it is that you want to do, I think that's very good. I'd be happy to take part in another conversation like that again. I don't know I don't know if we're going to disrupt what we thought we were going to do on the board today, if we sort of spent the next hour on that, quite possibly. I think what I would say is that there's another balance to be struck, I think, between, on the one hand, these things being living documents and you constantly updating them, and on the other, just getting to the point where the beta version that we've got is enough for now, that enables us to move on. And I guess that's just my question, is that if we just keep coming back to it, does that stop us from moving on and doing some of the other things that we're talking about?
I agree with Angie that I think we're really close. And that if we can nail down structure of the document and the key values that need to be addressed, then it can be wordsmithed. It can be edited. It can be changed. But I think that at that top level, if we can nail down those things, then it is really close.
So I'm going to have to jump off. I'm going to have to hand over the.
So you're like the crazy uncle that riles up the kids and then leaves.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.
But I think in my exit and leaving a wake, I just want to reiterate a couple of things that I do think we need to use as the lens as we're going forward with this. I want to bring back up what Vu was saying, is anything that hints at an us-them kind of structure, or which I will, we have our triggers. The word inclusion to me is one of those trigger words that is a us-them word, as opposed to something like agency or engagement, where really those can be defined as co-creative spaces and co-power spaces. I think having that as an emphasis to make sure that we are reorienting any language around that. And then, so that was one really important thing that I think I want that I want to honor. And two, although it's already been put in there, is a recognition of the systems. And I don't know whether we need to sort of, does white supremacy and patriarchy sort of do enough to touch on the fact that, these disparate outcomes happen because of race, gender, age. I don't know how much we want to qualify the things that we know are used as levers to disadvantage people and advantage others. So
I don't think we can say it enough.
Yeah. So those are my sort of parting pieces that I have to add. And I'll keep my notes on recruitment off to the side for when we can.
Justin, I would love if you could share with us after the conference, if you could share with us your reflections on the event that you're stepping into.
Yep, I certainly will.
Thank you.
So, and for anybody who sees this later that doesn't know that, the reason I'm leaving is I am going to participate in the Facing Race conference right now. So, okay, Good to see everybody. Take
Thank you,
care.
Justin.
Justin, thank you.
Maybe we can focus on those values, the preamble and the values, and how we want to revise those, and then figure out the rest of the structure if we have time.
Mhm.
So where do we start? Let's get this thing cracked. Come on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh,
We're just going to be going around in circles if we don't crack this.
I am looking at the opening paragraph.
Should I share that? I could share my screen with that. Are there other people watching maybe that won't see this? unless
Yeah,
we share?
I think that's great. And I think for right now, where personally I would feel more comfortable, is in fact over naming what the issues are, that somebody can always come back in later and say, yeah, okay, I think that's a little bit of overkill. I think we add in everything that we think it needs and then pull stuff out, rather than leave stuff out and then have people say, so why is that not in there? So when Justin was saying, do we, necessarily need to talk specifically about race and gender and sexual orientation? And to me, there's a yes. The systems throughout the world have been systematized to over benefit the few. I'm really comfortable naming those few.
Okay.
So for me, there's, and white men in specific.
Yes, and 55% of white women voted for Trump. I'm gonna say.
Yeah. The race split was something like, I think, 75-25 or 65-35. White people in general voting for Trump. I would also caution us to use as plain a language as possible. That we not fall into the trap of over intellectualizing, that we really say what we mean.
Can we use profanity in this?
Oh, now we're talking.
Like the F word, can we include?
So I have to tell y'all that I decided during the presidential race that I was going to run for president, that I have absolutely no platform, but that I had a killer slogan, and it was, "What the fuck is wrong with you people?"
Yes.
I had decided that was my campaign slogan. Hildy for president. What's wrong with you people? There's something in there in terms of valuing experimenting, a place for experimenting. So beyond just learning, the experimenting that is needed for us to learn.
What about the preamble? Is there anything else in the preamble that needs?
I have a question about environmental stuff.
Mhm,
that,
mhm.
these factors that we're talking about, we're looking at it specifically as it affects individuals, but those individuals live in an environment, and the environment is being, the over benefiting the few affects people in direct and indirect ways. And an indirect way is the fact that, for sake of expediency, the water's dirty, the air is dirty, the forests are dying, all of these things that without a better share of resources really disadvantages people who don't have resources. You can't put up a wall around your compound and have your greenhouse providing your own food and whatever. So I'm not sure how to state it, but I'm thinking and looking for feedback that maybe that needs to be touched upon at least as well.
I added, Dimitri, in the middle paragraph, I added and under benefit the many, everyone else, and our planet as a whole.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm, again, in terms of being direct, I don't think the systems under benefit the many. I think they extract from the many.
Mhm. Yeah.
And by the way, Angie, I like the fact that we're doing this on the screen in real time, because when this is watched in the future, not only are we talking about it in our conversation and our talking heads, but we can watch it in real time and see what the words are. So Hildy, when you said, and the planet as a whole, how does that fit in the context of what we're saying? I have to remember that? No, I can look on the screen and I can see exactly what we're talking about. So I just want to add that this is a really great process for doing this.
Yeah.
You should have seen it last time. So do you think then that those credit card size values are broadly right?
I'm messing with just the opening to just to make it consistent. And then when somebody else is running this place, they can change it. But I'm just keeping it with.
That was quite an evil laugh there.
Yeah. I'm looking at the very opening of creating the future. Our mission is systems change, so that the systems we encounter every day are creating conditions that advance everyone's ability to thrive.
Yeah.
It's again being really explicit about who we are, what we're about.
So are we ready to, at some point, I want to tackle this equity and inclusion bullet and how we can make that less us versus them. I think, but whenever everybody's
Is that in
ready.
the credit? Is that in the blue, the credit card size value?
It's the bullet. Yeah, it's the third bullet.
Okay.
Actually, I wonder if I can change these to numbers just to make it easier. There, might make it easier.
Good. You are awesome. You are my hero.
So I think Justin said something like co-power. What else did he say? I can't remember. Well, this is where we might want to be explicit, I think, about raising up the voices of people of color or BIPOC that we had talked about several times in previous discussions.
Maybe co-creation.
I think so, but I think there is something to be, what, I think
Mm, yeah.
co-creation, but also, you know, this idea of like, in particular, raising up voices of, of people who have not had the same access, right? I mean, the whole idea that we talked about previously about, you know, reparations or other ways to create, to adjust for the long-term inequalities. Vu might have something to say about that. I saw you unmuted.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Angie. I'm still trying to think about that. Sorry, I'm I think I want to get back. I'm still pondering the preamble, second paragraph. I think it'll be helpful if we take out the things in parentheses and move the parentheses so that they're very explicit. So I would probably say something like, you know, systems are inequitable because of white supremacy, racism, patriarchy, colonialism, capitalism. Racism. This has resulted in white men or white folks benefiting, white folks, especially white men benefiting at the, you know, and extracting from Black, Indigenous, and communities of color and other marginalized communities. I think we should try to avoid parentheses if we can break them into sentences.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anonymous Chipmunk.
Yeah. Who is that? Is that me or is that you, Hildy? I don't know. Am I anonymous right now? Have led to, what else did you say, Vu? Led to white privilege, white men. You remember what you said?
To the benefit of white people, primarily white men.
That have been systemized. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if it's grammatically making sense yet, but it's getting there.
Yep, that's what both of us are doing this at the same time.
I think you're the anonymous chipmunk, Hildy, by the way.
Am I?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, how
Yeah, I
awesome.
think you are the anonymous chipmunk.
I'm the anonymous chipmunk. Now I'm less anonymous.
Not to Google.
Wow.
Yeah, right. Google knows everything.
We'll probably break that into like 3 complete sentences. That'll make it easier. I would also maybe take out the everyone else and be explicit about what, because again, this really centers white folks. And then there's everyone else. So maybe we just say from Black, Indigenous, communities of color, disabled communities, or communities of disabilities, etc.
I just like everybody who's not a white man. By the way, Pima County, which is where Tucson is located, elected our first Indigenous woman to a countywide office. And she is awesome. She is absolutely amazing. I confess, Dimitri, you might want to hold your ears. I am so in love with her.
I knew that. And significantly, to the position of county recorder, who is in charge of voting and balloting and whatnot, and whose platform was to make sure that communities of color and indigenous communities are encouraged and have every possibility to vote. And so it is a, sort of a perfect place for her to start what she's doing.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I don't know the best language to use around this, but people with disabilities, or there are different, better language to use with that. And then also adding groups of people that are different, is not the right word, but non-cis, I don't know, gender identities or whatever. I don't know. We have to figure out what's the best language to use.
I would say I think disabled people just prefer disabled people now.
Disabled people.
Yeah.
Is people with disabilities centers the people part. Disabled people's kind of centers the disabled part. So I don't know.
I think a lot of disabled folks are just trying to reclaim it. I think there's this movement where people are like, people who are visually impaired, and they're like, no, just call us blind. There's nothing wrong with saying blind people.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same now with this. LGBTQ IA might cover.
I want to be clear. I'm just looking at that last sentence that talks about preventing people from thriving. We're talking about people who are being killed.
Yeah, right.
We are talking about Flint that's being poisoned. I think we need to stop dancing around the thriving thing.
Like people being killed in their beds.
Yeah.
Let alone driving, walking,
Right.
etc.
Being human while Black.
Are there other groups? Yeah.
I'm wondering
There's
about
a statement.
labor. I'm wondering about labor.
But what, hon?
Labor.
Extracted labor.
Oh, yeah.
Extracted power, wealth, labor, and resource from Black.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Union Guy.
Okay. Oh, you got it. Can't say that enough.
I'll fight you for it. The chipmunk is at it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Extracting.
Just looking at this is a hell of a statement. This is who we are.
I'm thinking about, and I don't, trying to see how to phrase this. I'm not sure this is where this is, but I'm thinking about the word compassion. It's a balance between.
I think that's in the values, babe.
Okay.
We can add something about that. Is there something in there already that's about compassion or empathy? Or though I'm thinking about I'm thinking about what Boo said earlier, and all these people imploring Democrats to reach out and try to understand the other side. It's like, well, yes, but they did advocate for putting kids in cages and etc. Like, there's only so much.
Well, I mean, if we want to get into the nitty and gritty of it, compassion does not mean condoning the actions of other people. It means treating them like people.
Yeah, which I think
it means, if we are seeking to understand, that is that is a deep part of our values, is seeking to understand and connect with empathy and compassion. But if I have compassion for a member of my family who is addicted to drugs and stealing and hurting people, I stop that person from doing that. So in my mind, compassion does not mean, oh, you guys are awesome and we love you. It means we stop you from doing bad things, not just because it's hurting other people, but because ultimately it's hurting themselves as well.
Yeah.
So I'm
and I realize this is just a slice. I've listened to so many sort of after the fact interviews where people who voted a particular way, I asked, well, why'd you do this? And oh my God, so misinformed. I mean, at least their stated reasons for it are wackazoid. I mean, they have no basis in reality. And so, it's sort of like, being angry at someone who has a mental illness. There's something missing in their condition. And the compassion would be in understanding that. And I agree, Hildy, it's not in condoning that action, but at least understanding that action. If someone,
it's that whole, the signs that you're seeing, in our house, we believe that science is real and love wins and blah, blah, blah. There's.
Yeah.
So there's an anonymous liger and an anonymous cormorant too.
Cormorant. We're going to use Oxford commas everywhere, right?
Yeah, you got it, babe.
You have to ask.
So now the real geekiness is coming out.
I think that's the sign. That's a sign for me that things are on the right track when I start focusing on things like the Oxford comma.
So what about this number 3? Back to that. I think somebody, I changed it to co-creation because I think somebody did that earlier and then it got lost. But
yeah,
what do we want to say here? We also say on number 5, we value the collaborative work of many over the work of individuals. I think the point we wanted to make with this value number 3 is something about addressing some of these issues we've already raised in the preamble, right? About addressing these conditions, these structures. I don't think we say that explicitly in these values that. I mean, I guess we do in this final sentence before the list of values. To some degree.
I understand inclusion. I don't really like inclusion or resilience very much. In fact, I kind of hate them both. I'm not sure I like co-creation either, though.
Yeah.
Feels very, I don't know, Deloitte Consulting sort of. So.
And I think it also says it above. We value making decisions with people, not about them. That's co-creating.
Yeah.
There are a few of these that kind of do the sort of even over, which I think one of you shared. I think it was Carl who shared that, which really stuck with me. And I think it's very helpful for us to think of it. And the first one, and I think the fifth one does kind of use that sort of language. And the second one to a degree. So I don't know. So maybe for the third value, I'm just thinking of something like we center the voices of those who are most affected by systemic injustice.
Yeah.
Something like to that effect, that way, if we get, and this does happen, is when we have folks who have more privilege and they're like, why aren't I being included? Just today, I was tweeting out about how BIPOC organizations have to jump through all these hoops to get funding. Someone's like, oh, that's not just BIPOC organizations, it's other organizations too. I'm like, don't all organizations this? Okay.
Yeah.
All organizations matter.
Yes, that's it. So, and everyone is definitely suffering, but we still have a lot of all lives matter type folks here, and I think having that sort of like allows us to be like, yes, you are affected, but we're going to focus on these communities.
You have health insurance. I went back and listened to Justin's parting words. It's nice having it in streaming because you could back it up when it's on the site and hear it. And the words he was thinking about for that area where he was talking about his difficulty with an us-them language
Agency.
was agency and engagement were the two words that he used. So I just wanted to.
I like what Nivu has put there. I think it is active.
Maybe we throw in agency after voices though. We center the voices and agency. Yeah.
I like it.
Well, the first one, I'm not so sure I like over speed though. I feel like a lot of marginalized communities are like, look, this is taking way too long, and we're tired. Like, do something.
Yes.
So maybe I don't know. Maybe we can take out speed.
Well, so here's a question. We're talking about long-term. We're talking about learning, experimenting, and sense making. Why is long-term and short-term in there? If we value learning, experimenting, and sense making.
I think.
What is it? What is that instead of not learning and being stupid? Because I'll vote for that, but I mean I'm in the over thing. We value learning, experimenting, and sense making over. I don't know that that's necessarily speed.
I'm thinking there might be two values here.
Yeah.
I feel like there's one which is sort of like catalytic long-term impact versus incremental change. And then the learn, experimenting, and sense making is like a separate value that we value while doing the catalytic, impact making.
That's what I'm seeing. We value listening to understand, building trust and relationship over speed and expediency.
Yeah.
For number 7, which I kind of think should be our number 1.
Yeah. Except for the evidence-based part.
Yeah, I think we just take out evidence-based and maybe replace it with, I don't know, something about centered or some, I don't know, something about like the live experience of, again, with from folks who have been most affected by injustice. Because that's kind of where the evidence, whenever we say evidence-based, it's basically white folks and academia's definition of what evidence is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's right.
On the other side, it is like, no, we actually, the evidence is our communities have suffered through injustice. That's the evidence. And they're the ones who should be driving a lot of the change. But I think resulting in greater health equity inclusion for everyone is already stated in the preamble.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say if we're going with Carl's even over one sort of philosophy, then I think we need to kind of balance that with like over incrementalism or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because number 7, actually, the evidence base, if we take that out, it's sort of addressed in these other bullets in different ways, right? That we value learning, experimenting, sense making. And then we're also centering the voices and agency of those. So if we just got rid of all that except for the systemic, we value systemic change over incremental change or whatever, that could be enough.
Yeah, I agree.
And put it, yeah, I guess we could talk about the order of these too.
How about incremental progress?
Actually, I gotta revalue systemic change. Progress, program, I don't know. Progress. Now this one's interesting though, because if you think about catalytic thinking, I mean, and actually, how is catalytic thinking reflected in these values? I'm thinking, that's actually a small change in our thinking could lead to catalytic, right, change in our behaviors. So how is that reflected in our, I'm not sure if number 7 counters that or aligns with that, and then I'm not sure if we have something that captures the catalytic thinking and our other principle, Pollyanna principles.
I just added a last sentence to the preamble. We believe new systems that advance a healthy, humane, just, and equitable world for everyone are both needed and possible. And we believe that being the change we want to see means walking the talk of our values, which to me leads into, and here they are.
Yeah.
Carl, you're quiet.
Yeah, well, we spent quite a lot of time last time going over this, and it's just really interesting reflecting and listening to you. It's
Is that good or bad, Carl?
it's good. I guess one of the things that I think we've always got to guard against is that I'm completely with everyone when you say we have to be really clear and say what we mean. I'm a very pragmatic person and I like that. But I think we just have to just catch ourselves occasionally with some of our language that being clear to us as educated board members might not be the same as being clear to someone who's reading these without our background.
Well, I think the question that raises is who will be reading them, and why. So just as a practical example, I attach a link to these in any contract that we sign. So if I've got a speaking gig and there's a contract, it says this contract will be subject to, and we will operate under the values linked here. So I think a big question is who will be reading them and for what purpose? I am stepping into, and we all are stepping into, major fundraising. And so having something that is this clear to be able to talk to foundations and donors and whomever, we're going to be looking at crowdfunding, something that we can place very, very publicly, and working with communications folks. Peter and Scott are helping us with communications. To me, this is the stuff we want to communicate to the world about who we are. But I think, Carl, it really does raise who will be reading this.
So when we were writing them last week, we sort of asked that question as well. If Angie, if correct me if you think I'm wrong in saying that. And when I was writing some of this, I was thinking, well, my first group of stakeholders that I'm thinking of is people that we want to join us on the board. So if you haven't got our history of being around these folk, could you read this and think, yeah, I understand that?
Or if you don't understand it, do we want you on the board?
Fair point.
I think it's pretty clear. I mean, but it's certainly the preamble, I think, is as plain English as it gets.
One thing that, thinking about what you just said, Carl, and I'm thinking about number 7. We value catalytic thinking.
Yeah, I just added that, but I don't know.
No.
But, yeah.
I think it's important, but I also am wondering from the perspective of clarity, if I don't know what catalytic thinking is, and I just hear those words,
Mm-hmm.
and I first encounter this document and start going through it, I just have a question. I don't have an answer here. I'm just wondering, does that, is there an opportunity there to define it further, or to, catalytic thinking, as developed by Creating the Future? I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. A link to a further explanation.
Yeah, and I've also been thinking about, and Carl, you guys may have already talked about this, is sort of the, annotate the annotations, so that, people can, sort of see it and it may be a small point, but I was just, you got me to thinking about other folks reading this and clarity of language. And I think it's very clear overall. And I'm just wondering if there's places where it may be open to question as to what is meant by that, some way of clarifying that. So I said that that's not a
I'm not
huge
sure
point.
that we value, I'm thinking about the words value catalytic thinking. I'm playing with language.
Yeah, I don't know either. I was just thinking about how do we articulate that we value changing, I guess, the questions, right? That whole back to changing the question, changing our thinking could lead to, but maybe it's more of an action than a value. I don't know. I guess there's a value. The value is that we value challenging, taken for granted, or challenging assumptions, or I don't know, maybe not. I don't know.
What happened? Where did everyone go?
Oh, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Did you lose? I could stop sharing for a moment. Oh, we lost Hildy and Dimitri completely. Oh my gosh.
We're still recording.
Oh yeah, let's keep this going. Keep this going. Hopefully they can get back. Okay, let's change everything while they're gone. No.
Quick, before they come back, let's change everything before they go.
I think this is good progress, but I guess maybe the next step is to kind of test this out by thinking about it in relation to this, board recruitment discussion further, and how we recruit, who we recruit, and if it works to use these values to guide us on that, and if they don't, then we go back to add or change.
Yeah, I do think that having a preamble will be more helpful in attracting like folks of color to join the board.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh, you're there. Come back.
We got bumped off.
Yeah, we lost you.
Okay, we're back.
We changed everything while you were gone.
Good.
Just
Good, then we can leave now.
Oh dear. Do we? It's 1:38. So just want to check in. Like, do we want to keep? What I guess what I just said before, while you guys were gone, was I was thinking that one way for us to see if we've got the values to where we want them is to try it out in relation to thinking about board, recruitment. And if we find that the values still are not adequate to enabling us to do that, we can go back to them. But I don't know if we've resolved all the issues. Should I share my screen again?
Sure.
I think that this number 7, we were still not quite sorted.
Yeah.
What we value the catalytic thinking process, we could maybe say, which then addresses, but yeah, the explanation would have to be a link to what is the catalytic thinking process.
It's almost a footnote item. And I'm thinking in terms of some of our terminology, which is not that strange, or there aren't that many, but it could be something sort of at the end of the document that if someone does have a question, it gives them, you know, a brief explanation with a link moving off the document. So you're changing that, Hilda, just now?
I just played with it.
You did framework and results just now?
We value thought frameworks that lead to visionary change over reactive incremental frameworks and results. Just messing around with it.
Yeah. Well, since you popped back in, you're now an anonymous bat. So I just wanted to.
I'm an anonymous
Just a note.
cat.
Even better, perhaps. But I do like, so do we want to keep though this valuing systemic change somewhere also?
I mean, it's in our mission. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
absolutely that lead to. I'm clicking on the shared screen and wondering why it's not doing anything.
Do you want to share something? Because I can.
No.
Oh.
I was
See
just
what you're
clicking
saying.
on the document in the shared screen and going, how come this is not?
Yeah, that's good. Systemic, just keeping that is good. Thinking, just put thinking instead of thought frameworks. Yeah,
Yep.
it's just to be the it's more
Yep.
straightforward.
Yep. I'm trying to focus on plain English.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Can we throw in, I don't know, risk taking or something in there? Somewhere? Or maybe the first value.
Yeah.
I'm focusing on number 3, which is feeling, even though it's even with the word them in it, it's feeling very us and them. And what we had decided over the years of our figuring out the structure of the organization is that decisions will be made by the people most affected by those decisions. So
You just say that.
that's not just, you know, the people doing the work, but also the people touched by whatever we do.
Yeah,
Maybe we value ensuring decisions are made by the people most affected by those decisions.
we don't even need to say we value necessarily because we don't do that. Well, we got number 5 says we center instead of we value. It just. In fact, we can take we value out of each sentence
I like it.
if we wanted to.
I like it. I think there's a strength in it.
So do you want to do it for each or all of them? Then we should.
There's something subtle in the difference between these are our values, which is a thing, and this is the thing I value. There's just a subtle this is, we value, to me at least, says this is important to us. And our values frequently just sounds like a plaque on the wall in the lobby. Which, by the way, our living room is our lobby.
Well, they're looking pretty good.
These look.
So it's a quarter till. Should we sort of start to wrap up here, like next steps for how we want to,
That's great.
what do we want to do next with these values, and then what's our focus of our next meeting?
That's great.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
Never stop sharing, honey. You share.
No,
such
I would always. I value sharing. Yeah, actually, that maybe I'm wondering about how our values reflect the idea of, abundance over scarcity.
Enoughness.
You might want to have some kind of way to convey that.
Really good point.
I have to participate in a panel at the end of this week for Ardova, where some scholars are trying to argue about philanthropy as commons. This idea of the commons right? And that there's, scarce resources that, we have to figure out how to manage them. So anyway, my job is to respond to their theory about this. And my first plan is to talk about we could think about philanthropy in different ways. That doesn't have to be necessarily just about as a scarce resource, but about philanthropy as love, philanthropy as sharing, philanthropy, anyway.
Collective enoughness, shove collective
Yes,
enoughness.
I will mention collective enoughness for sure. And that, and then of course, the tragedy of the commons. There's different tragedies of the commons, and they failed to mention about philanthropy is founded inherently in racism and capitalism, but that will also be fun to mention during this discussion. Anyway, side note.
I'm adding one into our values.
Okay.
I just made it the one before the last one that says we celebrate the value of collective enoughness, that together we have everything we need.
I can share that really quickly so everyone can see it. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And I will tell you in my speaking, my writing, my podcasts, the reactions that I get from folks to all of the blah, blah that Hildy can do, they love the words collective enoughness. That resonates so consistently with people, that together we have everything we need. And that when we focus solely on money, rather than focusing on resources we can share, it just, you can see their shoulders relax. So there's something powerful in that.
That's very.
Angie, you just did a kick-ass job on this. I just need to say, I'm valuing you right now. You just led this.
And Carl, well, team effort. So I guess we need to make sure Justin's okay with what we put together, and maybe also we'll share it on the blog to see if other people have.
We can do it as part of the e-journal. We'll do an e-journal this week that that comes back to, does this look like what you think of when we did the values initially? So this was 2017. We actually did several e-journals and lots of social media where we said, what do you think we value? From what you have seen, because this is going to be a statement of our values in action, from what you've seen, what do you think we value? And so much of that is embedded in the original document, which is very cool. And now we are honing that. But going back and saying, does this look like what you think we are?
So we'll focus in on that preamble and those bulleted lists for now, and then we can, I guess, next steps too are to figure out how to, if we want to extend further explanation about those into particular actions.
Well, and then as Justin had mentioned, the structure of the document overall.
So that would be a discussion we could have at our next, by next meeting, we could get some feedback from folks.
Yep.
And then have that as part of our discussion, and then hopefully start talking about recruitment and how we make those values actionable in relation to recruitment.
Yep, that'll be awesome. Do you all have, just because it's a helpful format, do you all have a copy of my board recruitment manual? If not, I will send it. Please make sure I have your mailing address and I'll send it. And we'll hope we still have a postal service in the US that can receive things.
Yeah, and well, hopefully you don't have to send it to Carl, because last time I tried to send a book to him, it was going to cost like $200 or something. It never happened. Sorry, Carl.
I'll find a PDF version we can get to.
Yeah. We need to all visit.
Boo, do you need a copy?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, all right. Just make sure I have your mailing address.
Oh wait, as an actual book? Okay.
If you don't, I'm happy to send you a PDF, but I'm happy to send you a book if you'd like, a real book, a real live book.
Oh, thanks, Hildy. No,
with a cover on it.
The PDF. Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay.
Okay, are there any final reflections? I'm just taking over the meeting now to facilitate it. I hope you guys are okay with that.
My reflection is that's awesome.
Okay, great.
My reflection is this feels really right. This document that we're coming up with just feels really right.
Good.
Yeah. Who else?
I'm really, 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 really grateful for the work that you all did too, because all we did was tweak what you all did, Justin and Carl and Angie.
Yeah, it's always an iterative process, isn't it?
Yeah, I always find it easier to edit something that is handed to me than to create it from scratch. And I have a different editing story, Carl. Mine is Orson Welles, who said there is no greater joy than editing somebody else's work.
I like that one better.
And in that quick aside, in that context, the movie Mank is coming out in about 2 or 3 weeks, which is the story of the writing of Citizen Kane and the relationship with Orson Welles and whatever. So,
and there is a chance, there is a small chance
that my youngest is in the movie. He had a small part that he did, and he's just concerned that, you know, how small parts sometimes end up on the editing room floor. So he may not be in the movie. I mean, he got paid for it and whatever, that's fine. But he gets to have a one-on-one scene with Gary Oldman in the movie. So that should be fine if it comes up. But in any event, it's about the writing of Citizen Kane. So you know that Orson Welles was in there with his editing pen, just dealing with that.
Yeah. Excitement.
Crossed.
Any other reflections? Carl, you got anything?
No, I guess, you know, it's tricky stuff, isn't it? It's it takes time, but the effort is worth it.
Yes.
My reflection is one, gratitude to the work that was done to bring us to this point. Also, gratitude to Vu for basically saying, wake up.
Yeah.
You need to, be less mamby-pamby. And I am kind of mamby-pamby by nature. I'm very conciliatory. I'm very, whatever. And I know that sometimes that is not in your best interests. And so I appreciate kind of reflecting on the fact that I appreciate
In anyone's best interest.
in anyone's best interest.
Mhm,
Nice to meet you. I definitely did not call anyone mamby-pamby.
mhm.
I'm just very grateful to Carl and Angie and was it Justin who worked on this? Yeah, and I think it's easy for me to come in at the last minute without doing any of the work and throw wrenches everywhere. That's what brings me joy in the world. But I really appreciate how receptive everyone has been, and I think this is looking really good and will be very helpful for us in recruiting other leaders of color to join the board.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Vu, when I talk about you to others, I say that Vu loves poking the bear.
None of y'all are bears here, so you know.
Mammy-pamby bears.
We're lazy bears.
You're like Care Bears. That's completely
Aw.
Care Bears.
Good save. Good save. Auntie, thank you so much for the facilitation.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. I think as we came to a good result for today, that we can keep moving towards next steps with recruitment, and also you will work on the blog posts. I could follow up with, or I guess, well, Justin will be kind of copied into that blog post. He'll have the chance to make suggestions
If you
as
will,
well.
Angie, if you want to send him the Google Doc, that would be good.
Yeah, I'll just resend him the juice. Yeah, I'll do that.
That'd be awesome.
Okay,
Cool.
great. Well, I think we're done for today.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a good-
everyone.
Have a good rest of the day, rest of the week, and we'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.